Talia and I were having a rough time of it. I was having a hard time recalling when we had last had sex. Furthermore, I couldn't recall the last time we had shared a passionate kiss. 2 years ago or so, Talia began turning down my approaches. Before then, our sexual lives had been healthy. Even at 50, it wasn't horrible, even if it had decreased to 2 or 3 if I was lucky and had a drink times a week. Talia was 48 and I was 50, and she saw 50 as being closer to a dental drill devoid of Novocaine. She never felt better when I told her that she was gorgeous and really wanted. It infuriated her. If I sneaked into the bedroom and spoke to her tenderly, she began to shut me in. Menopause. Although it may not seem significant to women, it is undoubtedly significant to males. My sexual life wasn't put on weight by it. It brought it up to the surface. After being married for more than 25 years, I had somehow grown dissatisfied with my wife. She would gnash her teeth and growl if I went close to her. I'm not sure what I said or did. I walked about for over 2 years, spending most of my nights on the couch. Foolishly, I let my spouse to convert our guest room into a sewing space. It didn't seem like a good idea to kick her out of there. My main intention when taking a shower was to try to decompress, but even that was typically interrupted by Talia banging on the bathroom door and screaming loudly enough for the neighbors to hear. "You better not be having sex in there, John Spencer. Already, our water bill is high, and I'm sick of cleaning tiles." Mrs. Sanborn, our neighbor, would act like she was about to spit on me and would try so hard to avoid striking someone she plainly thought was a pervert when she walked past me in the corridor or lift. Mr. Sanborn simply gave me a pitying glance while sporting a sly smile. This was at my breaking moment. I was really unhappy. My spouse was not happy, and it seemed like our neighbors were also disturbed by our issues. On my work computer, I started searching for information on the divorce. I was scared to do this at home since I thought Armageddon may result. It didn't seem good, though. My spouse was not employed. I would most likely be responsible for paying the rent while she would likely receive alimony. Besides, there was a strong possibility that she would acquire the most of our possessions save the flat. At least my wife would be sleeping with me once more. I was saving money on 2 flats at least by staying married. I would never have sex if I got divorced. Not even taking a girl out to supper at McDonald's would be possible for me. I was in serious trouble. I was thus astonished to see my wife at the dining room table with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine, and to hear her intimidating comment, "Honey, we need to talk." I was in a fog when Talia began to speak with me. I said, seeing where this was leading, sleeping with other men. She desired to have sex with different men. She wanted fresh men to play with, but she couldn't bring herself to get into bed with me. How in the hell? She had halted, staring at me eagerly, I realized. I cried out, "Sorry, Mrs. Sanborn, and what the hell am I supposed to do while you're having fun with every swinging man you can find?" as my rage welled up inside of me. The shock was reflected on her face, and I felt like I had touched a nerve. The triumph was short-lived, as Talia's expression changed to one of rage, pounding the table with both fists before grabbing me. It startled me hard, but it pulled me out of my stupor. "That's why I sometimes despise you." My spouse's eyes filled with tears. "I want no part in sleeping with other men. I want to sleep with no man, not even you." She took a drink of wine and wiped her eyes. I intended to say weasel words, Talia, not arsehole. I was about to declare that I'm over having sex. I want to scream every time you touch me. I want to pull your arms off just by thinking about having sex. I did not say that it was fair to you. I adore you, even though I feel like I'd rather murder you than touch you more and more of the time. I adore our shared lives. I am aware of your pain and that taking baths isn't relieving it. Yes, particularly when that damn door knocks. I was about to reply, "I think you should sleep with other people," when she halted and met my eyes. "With other females?" I was skeptical about this talk, so I inquired carefully. "You desire that I have sex with other women?" "Yes, sir," my wife muttered. "I mean, it's better than an arsehole, right?" I wasn't sure if I should be happy or not. I talked without hesitation as I recalled my feelings about dating following my divorce. "Talia, I'm a 50-year-old man who isn't very fit or affluent. I doubt that there would be a long queue of people waiting to get into bed with me if my own wife thinks I'm ugly. I've given it some thought. I know this girl from the gym, Vivian, and she saw your images and volunteered to help. Look at this." Talia extended her phone. Vivian was quite attractive, if not breathtakingly stunning, and she had a Filipino or Southeast Asian appearance, probably Thai. Her age was most likely in her mid-30s. Despite the fact that I've never been good at estimating the age of Asian ladies, my libido started to increase as I took in this woman's size. Does she wish to join me in bed? Are you joking with me? My wife's hand extended across the table again, and I felt like my mouth dropped open. She covered my mouth with a poke to my chin as I flinched. Stop sighing, she said. She added, eyeing me mockingly. I don't get it either, however. Some women have a thing for older guys, perhaps she has a daddy fetish. I stared at the picture of what might have been mine while I continued to hold her phone. I gulped down the spit that was on the verge of becoming drool. Okay, I'm trying to be a kind arsehole, so what do you think? My wife angrily inquired. The stroppy woman, who didn't want to be entertained, was satisfied even though I could hardly nod my head. Okay, I'll have you sign this contract. Startled, I glanced up. Unwind, my friend. It states that you will spend Saturday with Vivian from 5 p.m. until 10 a.m. on Sunday. During those hours you are free to do as you like. You may sleep, go out to eat, have sex, or watch a movie. That should lessen the tension. You are still my spouse, though. The only Saturday night remains. You're with me for the remainder of it. I'm just giving you this pass, no other ladies. Proceeding farther will have repercussions. You'll foot the whole bill when we file for divorce. Recognized, Buster? I spoke carefully, not wanting to ruin the transaction, but shouldn't I at least get to know her first? It was just Tuesday, yet I felt so tight that I nearly moaned. On Saturday you'll get to see her. She's willing to share her legs. Do you not consider that sufficient? Talia's eyes were growing angrier, and I could see it. I took out my pen and signed her paperwork. She mentioned legs. That's what I heard for sure. Talia refused to have sex even throughout our honeymoon. I had to remove the saliva from my mouth. With a sly smile, Talia put the document in a folder and got up from behind her desk. It dawned on me that I ought to have perused the document or requested a copy. Then I thought, how could that be wrong? What the hell? Yes, I see it's foolish. However, enthusiasm usually wins over ignorance. When Saturday finally arrived, I visited Vivian at her flat. Her photo did not do her justice, as I discovered when she opened the door. She was quite beautiful. She extended her hand, grasped my hand, pulled me into the flat, and wrapped her arms about me. I've been waiting all week for this. Gorgeous. She drew me close to her after saying those words, and I never felt a more intense kiss. She pushed away and led me into the bedroom, and I was so tight it ached. She forced me into the bed after undressing me. After that, we had a leisurely and sensuous kiss. It was magnificent. We ordered pizza delivery and ate it in bed at 50. Though Vivian wasn't expecting much, she shouldn't have been shocked when, 2 years later, she was able to extract all 4 of my good sessions from me. And so started what turned out to be the best period of my married life. I felt fulfilled sexually. I might have been swept away for 2 weeks in one night with Vivian. I was radiant. I was taking off. With a smile that seemed to be stuck on my face forever, I irritated Talia, but she took it well, laughing and shaking her head. For the first time in years, Talia and I were almost generally cordial to each other, and we had found balance in our lives. It appeared that her sense of humor had returned, and I was once again enjoying her company. On Saturdays, though, Vivian and I would go out to supper. Plays, films, or dances, and then we would come back to her flat for a magical evening of beautiful dreams. Her worship would almost usually start Sunday morning. Life was lovely. Talia inquired about my and Viv's relationship. Even Talia requested if Vivian could videotape us making love. Vivian informed me. I was surprised to hear Talia mention that she missed it. I was apprehensive to allow Vivi to grant Talia's request. Though Vivi claimed it would be enjoyable, and I think my opinions were affected by what she was doing at the time, I felt horrible about filming things. Thus I approved. So, Mrs. Spencer, is this the man you didn't want? She said, staring into the camera as she briefly sucked on me and set my phone to record. You old big cow, he's mine now. She laughed when she said that. She called my wife a cow, and before I could say anything about it, she leaped on me and continued. After I objected to her statement, Vivian and I taped another session, which she then emailed to Talia and removed the fat cow from. At Vivian's flat, nobody opened the door on the next Saturday. I took out my phone to give her a call, but while I was listening to the call end in voicemail, a pretty young lady came up to me.
Hello, Mr.
John Spencer, Mr. Spencer? She asked. I nodded, thinking she had a message from Vivian, and said yes. She stated, "You have been served," gave me an envelope, and snapped a photo of me standing there gaping open. As she was leaving, she told me that in addition to the divorce papers, the envelope had Talia's attorney's information and a restraining order. I was to phone her to set up a supervised visit so I could get my possessions. 2 days after I stopped hearing from Vivian, the line was disconnected, and I found out that Talia had banned my calls. I only communicated with a lawyer. He made arrangements for me to go to the residence with a sheriff's officer so I could get my clothing. My pal Joey was there with a key, even though the locks had been changed. I allowed you in per Talia's request. Sorry, John, she doesn't want to see you. Joey was my childhood friend, a police detective. He and the constable greeted each other. Joey knows everyone, I promise you. It's not your fault, friend.
I assume you don't have space at your house for me. He didn't say yes, and I wasn't expecting him to. I'm sorry, man. I won't pick a side between you and Talia since I love you both. That disappointed me even though I expected it. Joey and I went back to second grade. He had served as my wedding's best man. For the last 25 years, he has only known Talia. Indeed, I am aware. That also sounds ridiculous to me. I slept in a cheap motel for 2 days before discovering a rundown studio I could rent for a month. My clothing barely fit in there, but I didn't believe I could afford anything more. I discovered a lawyer, and he gave me financial advice. Naturally, though, Talia had already taken out practically the whole amount when I arrived at the bank. At the investing firm we were utilizing, it was the same. What went awry? Why had Talia filed for divorce, even citing infidelity as her reason for being so furious with me? I informed the attorney of our agreement, which Talia herself had arranged. I even mentioned the written contract to him. What was said by it? He inquired. I hadn't actually read it, so I wasn't sure. I informed him that Talia said it just stated that I could stay with Vivian on Saturday night. I was hers for the remainder of the week, a girl she discovered at the gym. And if I do anything else on Saturday night, there's going to be repercussions. I'll be broke and destitute. What action did you take? He inquired. I swear to God that I didn't realize everything between us was okay until now. I was both depressed and in disbelief. Well, remember to bring your copy of the contract the next time. When I told him I never received a copy, he simply shook his head. I had no idea I would require one. Yes, once again, dumb. My lawyer looked at me like that. Anyhow, my lawyer seemed relieved when I gave him the complete story about how Talia came up with the idea and located Vivian for me at the gym. So this Vivian is able to verify what you've said? Is she aware of the contract she signed with Talia? He inquired about her address and phone number after I verified that she did. Now, here's the situation. Her phone number was cancelled and she relocated. I told him I had no idea how to get in touch with her. The attorney inhaled deeply. What about her friends, family, or workplace? Surely they can get in touch with her. I said, I don't know anything about them in a timid tone. We've never left the bedroom to socialize. The attorney wiped his brow angrily. So your word is in opposition to your wife's? You know what, my friend? He was done. Yes, I messed up once more. My wife told me in court how her husband's insensitivity towards her menopause caused her to become menopausal. Went so far as to hire a whore for himself, and even forced her to show me a video of their sex. Even worse, I was dubbed an old fat cow by his young chippy. She was guided through the embarrassing questions by the attorney. Which number was used to record the video? The response was my husband's number, and then I started crying even harder. The attorney only shook his head. And when his chippy called you an old fat cow, what was your husband up to? She cried as he screamed that he was coming. He was aroused when he heard me degraded. The judge, a young woman, with gray hair, gave me a sour look. Could anyone have imagined Mrs. Sanborn to be a judge? The videotape was turned in as evidence by Talia's attorney. Luckily, the court agreed to examine it in chambers. Talia said. I love him without waiting for the attorney to respond. I looked after him, gave him my body, and nursed him back to health for over 26 years. But he's tossed me aside now that I'm old and dry. She gave me an honest, tearful gaze. I was taking hormones. How come you weren't able to wait for me with patience? I believe I was the only one in the courtroom with a dry eye. I even caught my lawyer wiping away a tear. During the cross-examination, Talia refuted having knowledge of any arrangement. Why would I want the most important person in my life to be with a younger, different woman? Crying once more. Up until Sunday morning, where do you believe your spouse spent his Saturday nights? Asked the attorney. Talia said, to fishing, and every time he returned home smelling like fish. Who would have guessed Mrs. Sanborn was funny? She hushed down the laughing with her gavel as her snort reverberated throughout the courtroom. I described in court how Talia had introduced me to Vivian and the draft agreement she had drafted. I was requested to present a copy of this alleged agreement during cross-examination. When I mentioned that only my wife had a copy and that I didn't, I heard the judge snort once more, this time in jest. Talia's attorney presented me with a mugshot of Vivian. Is this the person that used to go by Vivian? He inquired. I looked at the picture and nodded. Your Honor, we were able to confirm that this female, Ray Obispo, is a well-known prostitute during our hunt for her in order to serve her with a subpoena. She has a history of begging in several places, and often she disappears after a few months. We think she's moved on. He picked up some papers and headed back to the table where my wife was seated. Your Honor, I present before you the checking account data that we obtained from Mr. Spencer's bank. Feason, according to a warrant. Mrs. Spencer is not registered on that account, therefore she cannot access the documents, which is why we required the warrant. I protested from where I sat. Indeed, we've maintained separate accounts throughout. But Talia manages our family's finances and has access to all of my passwords. She keeps the checkbook balance, not me, for heaven's sake. Talia shot back, that's not true, Your Honor, from behind her desk. His passwords are unknown to me, he never shared them with me. The magistrate struck down her gavel, directing the two of us to remain silent until we were questioned. Could you please review the entries that have been noted in these statements over the past 7 months, Mr. Spencer? The attorney inquired. The papers were literally shoved in my face. Could you please identify those records for us? I was confused and answered, well, they seem like money transfers from my account. He asked for how much money? $500? To each his own, I shook my head. However, I haven't done them. What is it? The attorney was not done. Which days did these transactions take place? Are you asking me to enumerate each one's dates? Things he mentioned. No, sir. Just the day of the week that they were scheduled to be there. Yes, attorneys do wear sly smiles. I deduced that by watching. Then it hit me again, ignorance. The gap in time between the two was 7 days. Everything takes place on Saturdays. Triumphant, the attorney grabbed fresh documents that demonstrated, in his words, that the funds were transferred to an account that Miss Obispo, the prostitute, had used to receive her payments. Thus you were indulging your egotistical sexual dreams at the expense of $500 apiece, while your poor wife stayed at home with hot flashes. I said every week that Vivian had put the whole thing up. But I don't think anyone heard me above Judge Sanborn's gnashing of teeth. It was finished. In addition to the flat, Vivian received 30% of my salary as alimony and 70% of our investments and savings. For the following 5 years, I was to cover the rent, maintenance, and attorney bills for her. Talia was still crying and wailing as we left the courthouse, saying the same thing again and over, but I still loved him. I wanted to give her comfort since, even though she had won, she looked so wretched. However, I saw there was no need as I looked up. My wife was wearing my pal Joey's arm around her waist, and as they exited the courthouse, he was holding her weeping head to his chest with his other arm. Not surprised, Joey moved when the divorce was finalized. Not that I hold him responsible. His bachelor pad was a lot nicer than the flat I remodeled. For the following few years, I struggled financially and frequented inexpensive pubs, where fortunately the ladies were even cheaper. Though none of the sex I had was good, it was more than I had during our marriage. All of it, I would give for one more session with Ray or Vivian, of course. Hell, Joey was welcome in Talia, even though I didn't like that he was keeping a sizable portion of my income in addition to the flat. From what I could gather, having sex with Talia was merely a sexual activity, therefore. I hoped he was a necrophile. I just was unaware of it until after my divorce, when Vivon and a plethora of cheap women appeared. Conclusion. Ray Obispo and I met at a convention in Detroit a few years later. She didn't appear sorry to see me or feel bad about her part in my divorce. Hey, I had a terrific time doing the position. I enjoyed yourself, I liked you, and I got paid $500 a week in addition to having my rent covered. I hadn't lived anywhere as wonderful as that in years. She gave a cunning smile. And I could bring my male dogs home the other 6 nights of the week? I was in a clover. I lost all patience with her. She paid me $350 each night at the friends and family rate, but she stayed late, so I was unable to attend the conference. While I was cooling off in bed with samosas from the hotel, the tale had already come out. Yes, I did know Joey from his time serving in Vice. He was one of those men who would let you get away with a brief intercourse in an alleyway or a BJ. He was not a big fan of parties. It amazed me that your spouse exchanged you for him. His hair is a touch curly, if you know what I mean, and he is rather little. Guess it was successful for Talia. She wanted the intercourse to happen quickly. I chuckled. In fact, even though she didn't reject me until the very end, I always assumed that she would have liked to avoid it completely. It was Joey who made the offer and arranged for me to move into the flat. He had cameras filming our dates, but they ultimately forced me to make a video using your phone, so it seems like he realized they weren't acceptable or whatever. I kept putting it off because, well, it would cost $500 a week. She winked and raised her eyebrows. It was great to have you as my boyfriend. Our dates were enjoyable. It wasn't only for pleasure that you were there. You appeared to be interested in bringing me out on actual dates and to dances. Her tears came suddenly. Since high school, I have never received treatment like this. I'm only a paid whore now. I consoled her as she sobbed, and she gave me more hours than I had paid for. I promised her that we would go on a genuine date the following time I was in Detroit, when she ultimately had to go. Really? Tears filled her eyes as she posed optimistic questions. Really? I bade her farewell kiss. No, I thought. Not really. Even at no cost, she was a lot of fun, but at $350? $500? I could have been laid 20 times at ordinary diners for that. Hell no. I was tired of wishful thinking after 25 years with Talia. The affordability was only a bonus,